guys, welcome back, guys, to Transparent with the Townsends. Guys, we're excited to have you back for this channel. We're excited to have you back for this.
Just start over. Ready?
Hey everybody, welcome to Transparent with the Townsends. Guys, we're excited to have you guys back for part 2 of the importance of paying attention to your spouse, guys, in this new series, Honest Conversations. And this one is about marriage. So, in marriage, paying attention to your spouse. So, in the episode prior, we talked about the importance of paying attention to your spouse when it comes to, first off, conversation, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Because when you don't pay attention in conversation, that's a big issue. We went into that because, you had that first little incident. So I was like, we need to talk about this.
Well, it wasn't the first incident.
No, I'm not saying it's the first incident.
Oh,
I'm just saying it was fresh on the dome.
It happened.
Yes, it happened. And so I was like, oh, we need to talk about that. Because we were talking about actually topics that we were going to talk about videos. So it was interesting that it was Holy Spirit
As we were
revealed.
talking about what we should talk about in our next video, I was blatantly ignoring him. And all of a sudden, that became the topic of our next video. So there you go.
Ask and you shall receive, right?
Yeah.
We were talking about in the last video about in conversation how it's important to pay attention because your spouse is being vulnerable and open with you in sharing their thoughts, something they're excited about, the things that just came to their mind. And so in the midst of that, everybody wants to have proper care and attention shown to them. And so that's why that's important, because that can damage your relationship in your marriage and then your relationships and your friendships and stuff like that.
Yeah. If you do it too much,
yes.
Like if it goes unchecked, then it can, nobody wants to be ignored. It's not fun.
Interesting enough, I was watching a YouTube short that I think applies to this right now. So, in the YouTube short, the guy was talking about, like, in the north when it snows, right? So, snow comes down and it's very light, like, snow just falls, because it's light, right? Mm-hmm. And so, it's very small and little and light, but then, like, when it hits the ground, like, people ball it up and make a snowball. And so, you can make a very small snowball, but if you keep rolling it up and it becomes a bigger and bigger snowball, eventually, it'll get to the point where it's so heavy that you can't move it. Mm. So, same thing with paying attention, like, it's very small the first time you do it, but if you continue to let it build up over time, it'll grow into this big mountain of a thing that it will be an immovable force in your relationship.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's probably why a lot of people get divorced, because they don't feel seen and, heard and paid attention to and cared for by their partner. So it definitely can be. What is that called?
Irreparable differences?
Well, it's not coming to my head. Y'all know what it's called. Inconceivable? Nope.
I think it's irreparable differences or something like that. I might be wrong with the word.
That's not a real word.
I'm making up words.
Not a real word.
I'm making up words.
I'll keep thinking about it.
We'll have it below in the caption.
Y'all know what it is.
But I think that reminds me of, like, when people, like, they have it in movies, but, like, you have those moments where, like, it'd be like, oh, well, so and so from the job was paying attention to me. She was showing me care. She wanted to hear what I had to say. She was interested in the things that I talked about, or she laughed at my jokes. Stuff like that. So
that's the seed, really, is that when a person feels like they're not being shown attention and they're not being made a priority, things happen. Yeah.
Thankfully,
irreconcilable differences.
You got it. There you go.
Boom.
You got it. I was close. I was close.
Okay.
She won't give it to me.
Sure.
Sure. Anyway, thankfully you have not done that to me.
Yeah.
So.
I think what's good about it is that if I do it, we just talk about it. You're just like, hey, look. Okay, I'm talking.
We don't let it build up.
Yeah.
Like we immediately address it when it's right then and there, versus like seeing it and then they just burying it, like, oh, they didn't pay attention to me this one time. Oh, okay, oh, they're not paying attention again. It's like, I think the sooner you address it, the better.
Yeah.
Versus just
harboring resentment.
Yeah. Harboring resentment or you ignoring, or you don't want to address the conflict. Like, it's not even really conflict, really. Like, it's really just seeing that there is an issue bringing that issue up and be like, hey, this is something we need to address. Because if we don't address it, I see this becoming a bigger issue. Mm-hmm. Now, I think people avoid that conversation because it feels like conflict, or they think it'll become a conflict because they're like, I don't want to hear what they have to say, or I think there's gonna be a big argument, or you know,
and we love to avoid conflict.
They might be upset that I say they're not paying attention to me. Mm-hmm. In which case, we put words and thoughts in their head or their mouth because we don't want to actually. We have conversations in our own head about what we think the conversation is going to end up being like.
Yep, all the time. In other words, just have the conversation. Just say the hard things and get over it so that it doesn't become a bigger thing down the line.
I think what has helped us in that is that early on in our relationship, before we were married, we both sowed the seed of transparency and honesty in being open to talking about things, so that way when we were comfortable enough to have those conversations and be like, hey, I don't like that you did that, or I don't like that you said that, or I don't like that you didn't pay attention here, or like, hey, I'm talking.
Yeah.
Like, we're open and transparent enough because we built the seeds and like the building blocks for it over time, where we can have the conversations and be like, look, I don't like the fact that you weren't paying attention to me just now.
Yeah. So you're saying we sowed the seed by already being transparent?
Yeah, like, I think it's the starting point. Like we started to like be open and transparent and honest with each other early on, so that way whenever it becomes like bigger issues or what could become a bigger issue, we are able to be open and transparent about the fact like, hey, this is an issue.
Yeah.
Where I think if
realistically, like, there were seasons of our marriage where we stepped out of that transparency,
right,
where we weren't as honest. Mm-hmm. And thankfully we got back to that, because I think for me at least, being in a space where we weren't being transparent and where we weren't being as honest as we had been before felt weird. Like, it felt off.
Right.
Yeah. We didn't even start talking about the topic yet, did we?
Not really. That's all from the recap. So hopping into the new stuff for today, I'm going to talk about, we're going to talk about, first off, the importance of paying attention to your spouse in the midst of their struggles. So this is kind of, what's the word?
Personal?
Yes, I think it's very personal to me because last year was a very hard year for you. Mm-hmm. And so I noticed that there was struggles, and a lot of that was compiling, so I had to kind of be more of a rock in the last year.
Thank you for that, by the way.
I was only able to be a rock because the Lord was my rock. So, because I was struggling, but you were struggling. You were struggling more than I was struggling. I think I was struggling with how to help you in your struggles. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, it was really hard for me. Like, I had to focus. Like, I don't like when people are grieving around me. Like, I have a hard time with like helping to comfort. Like, comfort is one of those things that's really hard for me because I don't understand.
Really?
Yeah, I don't really know. Like, when I go to funerals and I see people crying or doing stuff like that, I don't know the best things to say. Like I'm sorry or condolences and stuff like that. It just seems very artificial and like stale to me and rehearsed and like very much like unpersonal. Mm. Especially if I didn't know the person who passed away, and I'm just like, I don't really know how this is hurting you or how bad this is, or it's like I just know you're in pain, and it's like I don't really know how to help. And I know sometimes it's like a matter of like I'm not even meant to really help the pain. I think sometimes just being there helps. Yeah. And paying attention and like being able to be somebody who they can count on, like, hey, I'm here. I think it's important. I've kind of learned that through being there for you in this last year. Like, part of it wasn't like, hey, I need to give you some comforting words, or hey, I need to help you out of this slump by preaching a sermon to you or giving you some scriptures or something like that. It's a matter of like, part of me helping you through that was just paying attention enough to be like, hey, today's a rough day. I need to pay more attention and like focus and hone in and like sacrifice more of my personal time, or sacrifice more of what I want to do. Like, if today's a sit down on the couch and cuddle with Crystal day, then we're going to cuddle on the couch for a couple hours.
There were plenty of those days.
That's going to take me sacrificing, reading time, study time, going out to do some of the other work, or going out someplace else. It's gonna take me sacrificing, or me taking on like cooking more during that period of time, which I did. Filling the role to help, and part of that kind of connects with love languages, because for you, like, your love language is acts of service. So I really stepped up in doing more acts of service for you during that period of time.
You did.
So I think that's another good thing. So if you're paying enough to know what your spouse's love language is, then you can step into the gap to do more of that, to kind of help people through their struggles.
I think we said that in the last video, how paying attention like kind of equates to love. And so just from you paying attention and noticing, and I actually have a question for you about that, like noticing that I was struggling and just kind of filling in the gap and catering to my love languages was just honestly a blessing. And like, I know I thank you all the time for just being what I needed at that moment, but really, like, I appreciate it. But my question to you was really, like, how did you notice that I was struggling? Like, what made you notice? Because obviously you were paying attention, but because I think sometimes it might be not that a spouse isn't paying attention, but that they just don't notice because maybe they don't know what to look for.
So I think one of the biggest, the first things that kind of stood out was you were a little bit out of character.
Yeah.
So you were more grumpy, more angry, more like less patience, a whole lot less patience, very snappy. So I think, like, for me, it was like, okay, instead of me taking everything personal and focusing on, like, why is she this way with me? What did I do to deserve her being this angry or snappish with me? Why is she not doing what I would want her to do? I was more focused on, like, what's going on with you? Like, what is going on surrounding you that may be affecting how you're different than how you normally are? And so it's paying attention to that, and then I was like, okay, let me pay attention to, like, maybe there's some news that happened or something around you that's affected you, some event that's happened. And that's when I noticed.
Well, I think you knew the event. I think you just didn't know how it was going to affect me.
Well, no, I knew. I didn't know fully. Like, you were that way a little bit before that event actually, like, happened.
Interesting.
Before the event happened and before I actually knew all the details. You were definitely, like, it was like the steps prior to
a whole season of just
the whole situation that happened. And I'm not going to get into it because she's mentioned before about how, like, it's dealing with someone else's personal information and we don't actually, like, divulge that stuff.
We can be transparent about a lot of things, and maybe one day I will reveal the entirety of the story, but it just doesn't feel appropriate to do that yet. So, yeah.
So, I know there's a lot of pain and grief in the midst of that. And so, I had to kind of, like I said, step up. I paid attention to that first off, right? Like, what is different? Why is there a difference? And then also thinking about, like, well, okay, let me take the benefit of the doubt and not think negatively in this. Like, let me see why this is happening. Like, instead of, like, taking the victim approach and taking it personal, I looked at what was the surrounding circumstances that could be the cause of this. And then from there, I just started paying more attention. And then, like, I heard about what actually happened. And then it was like, okay, well, that's going to affect things, but how's that going to affect things? And so then it's just, like, causing me to hone in more on my focus and, like, slowing down, which, like I said, the last video was hard for me. So I had to slow down even more to be, like, just to show more care. And see, like, okay, where's the gaps here? Like, what did you need?
Yeah.
So that way, that's how I honed in. I could have easily, like, took everything personal, gotten angry, checked out, been an antagonistic force in the midst of your struggles, which would have made the struggles even worse.
Yeah.
And it could have caused a major problem in our marriage. And I could have even allowed that to be something that allowed me to find a reason to check out. And I know people do that in the midst of like struggles. They especially if it's like hard or like grief or anything like that. Like people will have a lack of care and no empathy or what's the word? They don't want to be involved.
Carelessness? Or
sometimes I think it's carelessness.
what is it? Nonchalance? Ambivalence?
Kind of, but I think sometimes it's also a rejection of it. It's like, I don't want to deal with struggles, so I reject it.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't marry you, or I didn't get in this relationship to deal with your issues.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like I might have said in my vows, for better or for worse, for richer or for poor, for in sickness and in health and all stuff like that. But the moment that an actual struggle is here, like, I don't actually want to deal with it. And so I think a lot of people do that. I know a lot of people that get divorced over that stuff. It's like, like I thought it was supposed to be Cinderella's story, where, you know, happily ever after. And the moment that we have issues and problems, now I want to check out. Like, give me my singlehood back, or give me my life back.
Yeah.
Like I didn't.
Or even like, give me my happy marriage back.
Right. I didn't sign up for this.
Because what happened with us was not something that was expected at all. Or even like our fertility story, like we didn't expect to struggle so hard. And I think what you're referring to when you said like, in a way I was already sad or already grieving before that was because we literally
went from one struggle to the next.
Literally. Like it was already a struggle, and then something really terrible and traumatic happened, and neither one of us saw that coming. And after a long season of already trying to process and grieve what we thought was going to be an easy fertility journey, something worse happens.
Yep.
It's like, oh, what's going on? And I remember during that time you telling me, because I think I was like in the closet or something, and our closet is kind of like our prayer room. Like we have a prayer closet. So like I was in the closet, and I think I just got mad, and I started like hitting I think it was like a pillow or something I was hitting, and you were just hearing this loud noise from outside in the room. And I think you came in eventually because you thought I was like tearing a hole in the closet or something. And I remember you saying to me, like, you didn't know what to do because growing up, you know, your mom and your sister, you never really saw them like have, I guess, a tantrum is kind of what I was having. But I mean, it was a well-deserved tantrum. Like I think I had earned the right to have a tantrum and to be angry about some things. But I just remember you telling me like you weren't aware of how to handle my emotions that way because you had never seen that growing up. So I mean, I commend you for stepping in and paying attention, but also like paying attention and doing something about it, because I think that's where it matters. Like you can pay attention and watch your spouse and then just watch your spouse struggle,
right?
Like he actually stepped in. And I think the thing about it is people who care about their partners, husbands, wives, like they're not going to watch their spouse struggle, even if they don't know how to handle it.
Right.
And I think that's the crazy part is that you don't always know how to handle the struggles that your other person might be going through, but paying attention first to know that they're struggling and then actually stepping in to do something about it or just to be present is where it's very important.
Right. I mean, that's part of love.
Yeah.
Love is part of it is intercession. Like
yeah.
you stand in the gap. I mean, that's what God did for us.
Yeah.
Like, he saw us in the midst of our struggles, even though we were in sin and technically opposed to him and his will.
That's good.
He decided to step in the midst of our struggles and give us comfort in a way out from it.
Yeah.
Where we could overcome and be back reconciled with him.
Yeah. And he became present with us.
Yes.
Right? Like Jesus was with us. Yeah.
He joined us. He joined us in the struggle.
That's good. Oh, that's good. Come on.
He joined us in the struggle.
Yeah.
He took on the bulk of it and the burden and said, "Let me take this burden from you."
Yes.
And then he said, "Okay, now you're free, and I give you a way to overcome, and I give you power and authority, and I give you an opportunity for eternal life with me, and the Father, and to experience love."
Yeah.
You were in the midst of pain, darkness, and grief, and struggle. Let me give you love, freedom, victory, overcoming.
Yep. I will experience it with you. And it almost reminds me, well, not almost, but it reminds me of the scripture about husbands love your wives like Christ loved the church.
Mm-hmm.
Like Christ came and struggled with us.
Yep. Sacrificial love.
Oof. Gosh, that's good. Wow. I just need a second to process that part. But anyway, yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Why else do you think it's important to pay attention to
I think
your
because we all have emotional and physical needs. And when you don't pay attention to your spouse's...
I had some very large emotional needs during that season.
If you don't pay attention to your spouse's emotional and physical needs, that can cause damage too.
Yeah.
First off, because, for example, with your situation, our situation, like if I didn't pay attention to your emotional needs during that time, like I feel like I would have lost a ton of trust with you.
Yeah.
Like trust would have been damaged. Our relationship would have been damaged. What you could count on me for, like my reliability, would have been damaged.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Like you would have not had any faith in my character. So I think it's very important that we, well, I'll even put it this way, like part of it too was like you had already had some doubts and some issues, like there had already been an attack by the enemy on your faith in my character and different stuff like that, dealing with things because I brought baggage of porn addiction into our marriage. And so I was paying more attention to my own physical needs, emotional needs, and not yours. And so in me being selfish and not,
And this had been years prior to.
Yeah, so I've been addicted to porn for years. Mm-hmm. And then brought that into our marriage. So our first year was rough because of that.
Well, our first year wasn't rough. I think that was...
no. So it didn't really rear its head up until the end of our first year.
Yeah, like our second year was rougher.
Our second year was rougher because we had...
It became more
resolving
prevalent.
Resolving that issue with therapy, right? But then we also were working on our fertility journey. So it's like trying to fix one issue.
That was the third year, yeah.
And so we're struggling with getting therapy for that, right? Which, thank the Lord, free from porn. And then struggling with the infertility issues. And then going out of that struggle into the grief with all the other terrible incident that happened there. So it's like it was literally back-to-back struggles.
We've been through a lot.
So it has been interesting. So I think it's important
Our first year was probably like the most stress-free.
Right.
Blissful honeymoon phase. Newlywed year.
Yep.
Like people say your first year is the hardest, and our first year was it was like floating on air, except for the fact that you were doing,
porn,
all that stuff. But I don't think
it didn't really hit hard until the end of our first year, going into our second year.
Yeah,
and
like I knew, but I didn't know.
You were very quick to bring it up and us to get into therapy, which I advocate for, because it allowed me to kind of address things, see roots of things, and like really go to God and get deliverance.
Yeah.
And so I do not advocate for anybody to get into porn or to allow the media and all that stuff like that about masturbation, all that stuff like that to it's harmful to your marriage, and it's harmful to your sex life in your marriage.
I think it is harmful to everyone's marriage, but because we are more specifically talking about Christian couples,
Christian couples.
And if you are a believer, there's no way that I think you should be like, yeah, let's watch some porn to get in the mood. Like, come on.
I was actually thinking about this yesterday or the day before about like when Jesus says, If you look at if you look at a woman in your eyes and you lust after her, then you've committed adultery. So it's like in porn, it's like
That's what you're doing.
If you're getting aroused by watching porn, even like first off, alone, not being married is technically, if you take that as verbatim, then it's adultery in a sense. But also, like in your marriage, it's adultery. It's like even if you're okaying it, it's not okay in the marriage bed because you're technically committing adultery. Yeah. In a sense, it's like in your heart adultery. It's not physical adultery, but it's like in a sense adultery because you're focusing your attention outward, and then you're taking the attention that you focus outward, and then now you want to try to steer that towards your spouse. When
kind of weird.
Yeah, so it's like the focus should be on you, and then our focus also should be together on God. Yeah. So it's like a moment of gratitude to God for our moment together on this. And yeah.
And honestly, like, since we're talking about emotional needs, I think knowing that you were struggling with being addicted to porn while we were married, even if, like, thank God I knew that it wasn't me. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, because I do know that that could have been a really bad place for me where I was like, I'm not enough for you, and I'm not doing enough for you. But I knew that I was, because I was paying attention to your physical needs. It was just what had already existed before our marriage, what had already existed before I even met you, was so deep, and it was rooted so deep that just because you got married didn't stop the habit. So I'm just saying that.
So I almost feel like porn is a whole nother video I should probably do, but I do want to actually say this in this video about porn, because we're on the topic of it now. Yeah. Like, porn is one of those things that it's like a hidden thing that they don't talk about, which is basically that it's
a spirit.
Yes, it's a spirit. But also in any form of addiction, like when you're indulging in an addiction, like there is no fulfillment. It only creates a desire for more. Like the moment that you quote unquote reach your fulfillment, you're empty again. And so you are constantly seeking a new high, a deeper high. And so really what it's trying to do is pull you into deeper levels of perversity. And so
the sin that's so easily entangled.
The problem was me having the habit of that for years prior to you, was I had this habit of constantly seeking more. And so it's like, even though you were meeting my physical needs, like I wanted more.
Yeah we had to hash that out in therapy. So that was a big deal. But
seeking an empty high. So I think it's very important that we pay attention to our spouse so that we can avoid the issues concerning those, because all of those, like I said before in the last video, it opens the door for the enemy to attack your relationships. And me not paying attention to your emotional and physical needs opened the door for issues that could have ended our marriage. But thank God that it did not. Because you were paying attention to my struggles. Look at that. You were paying
oh man. And I know we're going to have a video and probably a whole series about this, because I think is so many people out there struggling with this thing and they're not talking about it because you don't want to admit that, we're going to talk about it in another video. But for me, I really understood that I could not help you with it. So I remember just always being like when I knew, and there were moments like I knew that you had just watched something, or that you probably were going to watch something later. Like, I don't know how I knew. I don't know if it was in the spirit, but I would just be like, God, you're going to have to deal with it. You are going to have to deal with them in this, because I feel like I've done all I can do. Like, I know that I'm I'm doing everything I can do in my power reasonably. You know what I'm saying? Without going overboard and losing myself in the process. Like, I'm doing the things that a wife needs to do, or a wife wants to do, honestly, to please her husband sexually, or just to enjoy you.
Right.
You know, like I knew I was doing all those things, but it wasn't enough, not because I wasn't enough, but because if he had this addiction, that meant he needed more.
Right.
And I was like, God,
the level was constantly
it's up to
being moved. It wasn't ever a end line. It was constantly being moved by the. And I think that's really, you can take that, because like I said, this dealing with addiction. You can talk about porn, you can talk about food, or being a glutton.
it's any addiction.
Like, the moment, like if you're
Drugs.
a glutton, the moment that you are physically full, your body or something is in you is telling you, I still need to eat, which is why sometimes people who are they just keep eating where it makes no sense, or you know, whatever type of addiction, you just keep doing it even to the point where it could possibly kill you.
Yeah. Unfortunately,
the satisfaction line just keeps moving.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think it's very important for us to pay attention to our spouses.
Pay attention, and step in when you. Oh, help me, Holy Spirit. Step in when you see the need that needs to be filled, that you can fill. If the need that needs to be filled is not something you can meet, let God step in. Always let God step in. But, you know, pay attention. Act on the paying attention, especially if your spouse is struggling. But let God do the rest. Do what you can do and let God do the rest.
Ooh,
let
I was
him
just about
fill
to say it.
the gap.
I was just about to say it.
We're here, you know.
Yeah. Well, guys, it's been a great time in this video.
Good talk.
It has been.
Good talk, guys. Thanks.
We heard from you, and we will. If you just email us at transparent.townsends@gmail.com or comment below in this video, guys.
Yeah.
Hit us back up. Let us know what you thought. Let us know what you're feeling. Be transparent and open about your story, because we're transparent about us. So we want to hear about you guys. We want you to feel open to be able to have honest conversations in your own marriages and your relationships, guys, in life. So that way you can breed, or not breed. You can bear the fruit of transparent honesty.
Maybe you're breeding something. I don't know. Breed transparency.
Glad to see the transparency and honesty, and the Spirit will cultivate it to allow you to bear the fruit of honesty and self-control. Guys, we love you guys. Keep up with us. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you guys again later.
Yeah. Be blessed.
All right. Bye, guys.